The snowstorm hit out of nowhere. I was cruising along the old mountain road, about 5 miles past the last town I'd passed, when it suddenly started. It was one of those storms that seems to appear without warning, the kind you never want to get stuck in, especially up here in the Appalachian Mountains. The roads in these mountains can go from manageable to dangerous in the blink of an eye. I was heading to an old cabin my uncle had left me after he passed. He was born and raised around here, and he always used to talk about how the land in these mountains had a certain pull on people. I hadn't been to the cabin in years. In fact, I hadn't been back to these mountains since I was a kid. But now, with my uncle gone, I figured it was time to make the trip. I knew the cabin wasn't far. It was about an hour's drive from the nearest town, tucked deep in the forest, far away from the nearest neighbor. As I rounded a bend in the road, I saw a flicker of something ahead. It caught my attention, and for a moment I thought I saw lights. No, it wasn't lights. The snow had caught the shine of my headlights, and the ground shimmered in a way that didn't make sense. It looked like there was something buried under the snow just off the road. My eyes strained to make sense of it, but whatever it wasn't clear. I slowed down, unsure, then told myself it was nothing. Just a trick of the storm playing with my mind. Snow has a way of doing that to you. So I kept driving, trying to push the unease in my gut aside, telling myself I was just tired from the long drive. When I finally pulled up to the cabin, I felt a strange sense of relief. The small, one-story building with its sagging roof looked like something out of an old photograph, charmingly worn down. The porch had seen better days, the wood battered by years of weather. But in the middle of the storm, it felt like a sanctuary. The wind screeched through the trees around me, but standing in front of that cabin, I felt safe. I grabbed my bag from the truck and trudged through the snow to the front door. The crunch of my boots was the only sound in the heavy quiet, and the cold air hit me like a slap as I opened the door. Inside, it was dark, except for pale moonlight filtering through broken blinds. The place smelled old and musty, like something forgotten. The air felt thick, as if it had been sitting stagnant for too long. I went straight to the old wood stove and started a fire. The smell of burning wood was comforting, and soon the warmth from the flames began to chase away the chill. The crackle of the fire helped settle my nerves, and I thought maybe tonight wouldn't be so bad. It would just be me, the storm, and a quiet night in a cabin that had seen better days. But even as I settled in, something felt off. It wasn't just the storm outside. It was the cabin itself. The walls creaked, stretching and groaning under the weight of time. The wind rattled the windows, and shadows shifted in the corners, moving in ways that didn't feel natural. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it made the back of my neck itch. The storm grew more intense, the wind howling like an animal. I tried to focus on the fire, but my mind kept drifting back to the way the cabin seemed to shift, like it was alive, breathing, groaning. I told myself it was just the wind, just old wood settling. I was almost dozing off when I heard it, a noise. I froze. It came from the back rooms of the cabin, deep in the house. The sound was faint but distinct, slow, deliberate footsteps. My heart began to race. I strained to listen. The noise was soft, like it was trying to be quiet, trying to hide. I was alone, right? I stood up slowly, my stomach twisting into knots. Grabbing the nearest thing I could find, a heavy iron poker, I made my way toward the back rooms. The hallway was dim, shadows stretching along the walls like dark fingers. My footsteps felt too loud, echoing off the wooden floors, making the house feel even quieter, even more oppressive. The back room had always unsettled me when I was younger. It was the one room I avoided as a kid, no matter how many times my uncle told me there was nothing to fear. He used to say the cabin was built on land that had been there long before anyone arrived, a place where something old, something bitter once lived, and maybe still did. Back then, it sounded like a story, like one of those tales adults tell to scare kids. But now I wasn't so sure. I stood in front of the door, my hand on the handle. The sound stopped. Everything went quiet. Too quiet. I could feel it. Something was in the room, watching me. I didn't know what it was, but I felt its presence, like a cold hand pressed against the back of my neck. I opened the door. The room was empty. Dust covered the furniture, the air thick and stale. Nothing out of place. Nothing, except faint footprints in the snow that had blown through cracks in the window. I turned to leave. Then a cold, icy gust of wind tore through the room, so cold it burned. My breath caught in my throat, and a voice, rough and hoarse, whispered right behind me. "You shouldn't have come." I spun around, my heart slamming in my chest. There was nothing there. The room was empty, just like before. The only thing that remained was the silence, heavy, oppressive, like the house was holding its breath. I didn't stay much longer after that. The storm was still raging, but it wasn't the storm that made me leave. It was the feeling that something was watching me, something ancient, something that had been waiting. I grabbed my bag, bolted out the door, and didn't look back. I'd driven out to my grandfather's old place near Laurel Hollow, deep in the Appalachians, just to get away for the weekend. The cabin was tiny, really just a one-room box with a fireplace and a sagging roof. But it was sturdy. My family's had it forever. I'd been going there off and on since I was a kid. When I pulled in, the snow was already piling up, thick enough that it swallowed my boots when I stepped out of the truck. Everything felt padded and muffled, like the woods had hit a mute button. That kind of silence always feels peaceful at first, but too much of it, and it starts to press in. Still, the first night was exactly what I came for. I stacked some wood, got a fire going, and cracked open a book. The wind outside picked up, howling through the trees. Out here, it doesn't just blow, it screams. Has this weird, high-pitched whine that snakes between the branches. If you're not used to it, it sounds like voices. But that's just mountain wind, right? At least, that's what I always told myself. Around midnight, I was half asleep in the armchair when I heard it. A soft, quick knock on the door. Just once. Then again, a little louder. Not pounding, not frantic, just knocking. At first, I thought maybe ice had dropped off the roof, or a tree branch had smacked the side of the cabin. But then the handle jiggled, just slightly, like someone was trying to open it without making too much noise. I stood up fast, heart hammering. I hadn't seen another car or person since the last gas station 2 hours down the mountain. There's no one out here. No neighbors. No hikers in that kind of snow. No reason for anyone to be on that trail, especially not in the middle of a blizzard. I moved to the window beside the door and peeked out. Nothing. Just snow falling hard, the porch light barely cutting through it. I almost let it go, almost chalked it up to my imagination. But then the door shook, 2 short rattles like something big and impatient. So yeah, that's when I opened it. I know, dumb move. But I had this sudden rush of anger, like if someone was out there screwing with me. I wanted to see them. I wanted them to know I wasn't just going to sit inside and let it happen. But when I stepped out, there was no one. Just wind, cold enough to sting my eyes, and this eerie stillness under the trees. And then I looked down. Tracks. Fresh ones. Trailing across the porch and back into the woods. But they weren't from boots. And they weren't from any animal I recognized. They were wide, long, and sunk deep into the snow like whatever made them was way too heavy. And the spacing was wrong. Like the legs, or whatever, were too far apart, almost stretched. They came straight out of the woods, stopped at the door, and turned around. I should have gone back inside. Locked up. Pretended it never happened. But instead, I grabbed my flashlight, pulled on my coat, and followed the trail. Not because I was brave. More like, I felt this pull. Like I needed to know. The tracks led uphill, through a narrow part of the forest where the trees twist together like ribs. I was moving slow, one hand on the flashlight, the other shielding my face from the snow. My breath felt too loud, like it didn't belong. Then the trees opened up into a clearing, and I stopped. There was another cabin. I'd never seen it before, and I'd been coming here for years. It was maybe 50 yards from mine, but buried deep enough behind the ridge that you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. This place looked wrong. The walls were rotted through, like black paper peeling off the frame. Windows shattered. The door hung sideways, barely attached. And across the front, carved deep into the wood, were these crude symbols. Some were circles. Some looked like hands or eyes or teeth. Messy but deliberate, and definitely not graffiti. They felt older than the cabin. I stepped inside. It smelled like rot. Not fresh, not wet. More like old mold and dry meat. The floor groaned under my boots. Everything was covered in dust, except for the walls. Those were clean, and they were covered in drawings. Symbols like the ones outside, but more of them. Some looked like maps. Others, I don't know. One looked like a person with no face, just a hole where the mouth should be. Another had too many arms. There were bones too, piled neatly in a corner. Animal bones, probably. At least, that's what I told myself. One of them looked like a hand. I should have turned around then. I should have left and never looked back. But just as I stepped backward, trying not to breathe too loud, I heard it. A growl. Low and slow, coming from the back room. Not loud, but heavy like it was coming from something big. Not a bear, not a coyote. Deeper than that, too deep. I froze. The flashlight shook in my hand. I aimed it at the doorway, but the beam didn't reach. Everything back there was just black. And then something moved. It stepped forward, not fast, more like it was testing the air. I saw the edge of its shoulder first. Way too high. The shape was all wrong. Long arms, hunched frame, and two yellow eyes that reflected the light like glass. Fixed on me, it didn't come closer, just stood there, half in the dark, watching. I stepped back, 1 foot, then another. That's when I looked down at the floor, and saw the wet prints. They weren't for me. Too big, wider than a man's, and not boots. Bare feet, sort of, except they had long, claw-like impressions at the toes. And they were fresh, right next to mine. That broke the spell. I ran, slammed through the doorway, ducked branches, nearly ate it 3 times on the ice, but I didn't stop. I didn't even try to be quiet. I just kept running until the cabin was in sight. I hit the door, shoved it shut, locked it, dragged a chair in front of it for good measure. Then I sat down and didn't move. Not even when the wind picked up again. Not even when I heard something outside, faint, soft, moving around, crunching slowly through the snow. I stayed like that until the sun came up. By morning, everything looked normal. Sky clear. Trees still. No prints on the porch. No broken trail through the woods. Just fresh snow, smooth as a sheet. I packed up and left within the hour. I'd been living in that old cabin with my mom for almost a year by then. We'd made the move from the city looking for peace. Or maybe just an escape. The cabin was old, creaky floorboards, walls that groaned like they were trying to tell me something, but it was sturdy. It had to be, built to survive the harsh winters the mountains are known for. And that winter, oh, it was harsh. Snow had been falling for hours that night. Thick, steady. Mom and I had a routine when it got cold. We'd sit in front of the fire, sipping cocoa, trying to make the best of the isolation. She'd tell me stories, old ones. Stories from when she was a little girl. Stories I'd heard 1,000 times. She said it was for my sake, to keep me entertained. But I could see through her. It wasn't just for me. She was trying to hold on to something. Something warm. Something that reminded her of better days. But there was always something off in her eyes. Something that flickered behind them. Something like a fear she never wanted to face. I didn't press her on it. I never did. I just listened, and wondered why she looked so haunted sometimes. But that night was different. The wind outside was fierce, like an animal trapped in the trees. It howled long and mournful, like something in pain. I asked her about it, about the sound. She waved it off. "It's the mountains talking," she said with a nervous laugh. But I saw it, the way her shoulders tensed, the way her hands gripped her mug like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. There was something about the wind that made the cabin feel smaller, like the walls were closing in, like the mountains themselves were pressing down on us, telling us to leave. I didn't argue. I didn't say anything, but I felt it too. Something was wrong. I didn't know what. I just knew it was. Eventually, we both curled up on the couch, the fire crackling in front of us. The warmth lulled me into a half-sleep. I don't even remember when I drifted off. The next thing I knew, I woke up in the middle of the night. My heart was racing. It was the silence that woke me first. Too quiet, too still. I've always been a light sleeper, but this was different. There were no creaks from the old cabin. No groans of the walls settling like usual. There was nothing. The air felt thick, suffocating. Something deep inside me screamed to stay still, to listen. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate, slow and steady, like someone trying to move quietly, but not quite succeeding. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't the house settling. This wasn't old wood and wind. This was something else. I pushed myself off the couch, my heart hammering in my chest. Shadows stretched down the hallway. The lantern's dim glow barely pushed back the darkness. I didn't know what was happening. I just knew I had to be careful. My feet moved on their own, carrying me toward the kitchen. The footsteps were closer now. Clear. Purposeful. Someone was in the house. I didn't want to look, but I did. I peeked around the corner, and that's when I saw him. A man, or at least he looked like one. He wore thick layers, a heavy coat, boots, a dark, wide-brimmed hat that hid most of his face. But it wasn't his clothes that made my blood run cold. It was his eyes. Or more accurately, the lack of them. His face was wrapped in a scarf, but where his eyes should have been, there was nothing. Just black pits. Hollow. Empty. No reflection. No light. Just darkness. I froze. My throat went dry. My body locked in place. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. He hadn't noticed me. At least, I don't think he had. Then he whispered, "Don't make a sound." His voice was low. Cold. Like it was dragged up from somewhere deep underground. I don't know what happened next. Fear. Adrenaline. Something snapped. He turned and walked toward the back door, slow, measured, like he knew exactly where he was going. He never looked at me. The door creaked open. Cold air rushed in, slicing through the cabin. That's when I moved. I ran after him. But by the time I reached the door, he was gone. The snow had swallowed him whole. I stood there, gasping, staring into the blackness. I don't know how long I stood there. Then I turned around. Mom was standing at the end of the hallway. But her eyes, they weren't afraid. They were empty, black, hollow, just like his. "Mom," I whispered. She didn't answer. She spoke, but it wasn't her voice. "Come back to bed, sweetheart." Behind her, another figure. Tall, dark, watching. I slammed the door shut. Locked it, grabbed whatever I could and ran. By morning, I was alone. I never went back. I don't know if my mom was ever really there, and I don't know what took her.